Introduction to Mental Health Presentation, Nije Boyce. For my presentation, I will be exploring Ariana Grande's life and experiences and trying to understand the aspects of mental health, relating this to different models that I've learnt throughout the course. Ariana Grande has won many awards in her music career, some including the Artist of the Year Award and Choice Female Award. This clearly shows that she's very popular within her fans. I'd say that she's most well known for her music and acting career, starring on Broadway and TV shows on Nickelodeon, as well as having albums in the top charts. I decided to do Ariana Grande after the Manchester bombing attack in 2017 being so close to home, knowing lots of people affected by it and lost ones during that day. It sparked an interest into wanting to research more into Ariana's life and the troubles that she's faced. Even though she's 28, she's faced lots of traumatic experiences which has left lasting impressions affecting her mental health. So here I'll be digging deep to underpin and uncover some of the reasons why she struggles today and in the past. Presenting problems are presenting thoughts, emotions and behaviours of the person, which includes signs and symptoms of mental illness. Thinking about Ariana's presenting problems, she constantly plays with her hair on stage due to what appears to be a coping mechanism in order to calm her nerves. She's also been known for staring blankly during shows, which could imply that she's dazed, confused, or perhaps just trying to zone out of a stressful situation in her head. Her nerves could be a potential risk factor and could cause harm to her during the shows if she were to have a panic attack on stage. A risk is the probability that a given thing will happen in a certain time frame. So if she's faced with triggering events, then the likelihood for relapse is high, relapse referring to panic and anxiety attacks. According to Parker 2017, the likelihood of certain outcomes occurring under certain circumstances are dependent on decisions made. For Ariana, the risks are more about causing harm to herself rather than causing harm to others, so the potential risk would be having a panic attack on stage. The risk could be injury, she could hurt herself, bang her head, or the risk could be losing her job, her career, in terms of she might not be able to continue, or they might just not book her because of these tendencies. Knowing about risks is a crucial way to protect vulnerable people so that the risk doesn't become a danger and end in a crisis. She's already had numerous shows had to be cancelled because of the anxiety attacks, so that we know that she gets easily overwhelmed. This relates to the psychological model in relation to self-esteem issues, which I will later talk about in more depth. Another presenting problem that she shows is how she's affected by her PTSD. This is shown when she's placed in triggering situations, for example, performing in shows or under pressure during live interviews, and having to actually relive the trauma. For example, the PTSD could come from the death of her ex, Mac Miller, or the Manchester Arena terrorist attack. She still faces these problems daily, as she was blamed a lot for both of these deaths. 22 people lost their life at the Manchester Arena attack, and because they went to go and see her, the reason solely they were there was because of her. She was faced with a lot of online abuse on social media, verbal abuse, saying that she caused their death. So she was faced with a lot of guilt. Although none of the deaths were her fault, she was linked to them in different ways. So for example, for her ex-boyfriend's death, she was blamed for it because she wasn't able to help him when he was alive. So people said that she didn't care for him and it was her fault that he died. This affected her mental health hugely, and her inability to form relationships in the future, as when she did get into a relationship after his death, it was cut short because she wasn't emotionally there and stable for it. She's written a lot of songs relating to her bereavement and not being able to get over him. So when she was with her next partner, she wrote a song, Ghosting, and she was talking about not being able to move on properly. As in a song, she says, "He comes to visit me in my sleep, I wish he was still here." This clearly shows that she wasn't able to move on from the death and has had a lack of closure and had a lot of trauma relating to his death and PTSD in relationships. Moving on to predisposing factors, these are factors that have increased a person's vulnerability to the current issue in place, so factors that have contributed to the person's problems over a lifetime, events and experiences which have maintained negative impacts on their mental health. One of the shows that Ariana was in was Sam and Cat, which left her with anxiety and PTSD tendencies and symptoms. Her character on the show was made to talk in a baby's voice and act very childlike, and as a 20-year-old woman playing this character, it wasn't an accurate representation of who she was. She wasn't really able to be who she was. She had to be careful of what she did, said, or wore because her young target audience was a younger audience. She was also surrounded by a lot of younger cast members, so her social skills were not as advanced as most people, leaving her more vulnerable in social settings. She wasn't really exposed to the real world, so she wasn't given opportunity to explore more mature characters or age-appropriate scenes. Her character was also made to dye her hair red constantly, and the upkeeping of this left her hair thin and damaged, sometimes falling out. Horlock and Josie 2019 say that the effects of damaged hair can have huge psychological impacts on young adults, which can then cause a great amount of anxiety regarding physical appearance, as it can greatly affect someone's self-esteem, as arguably hair is a big part of someone's individuality. The biopsychosocial model is how we think about the things that influence our mental health. The proposed models are said to be helpful for a thorough understanding of all relevant influencing factors in violently mentally ill people. In relation to the model, all three core systems have been affected. So biologically, her hair fell out. Psychologically, her self-esteem dropped majorly. And socially, she became withdrawn as she was only socialising with crew members of a certain age. She also might have felt like she didn't want to socialise with other people with her hair coming out. She didn't want other people to see her, maybe. As being in the public eye, which is an industry based on appearance and image, she wouldn't have wanted people to see her like that. If she wasn't feeling her best, she wouldn't have wanted other people to see her like that either. So this will have contributed to her anxiety and made her feel very nervous and panicky in public if she was in a public setting. Also, whilst on Sam and Cat, there was lots of sexual assault allegations. Sexual violence has a profound impact on physical and mental health. Art et al. Set up a study to examine patterns of mental health problems in sexual assault victims and found that co-occurring severe PTSD, anxiety and depression symptoms were high among female sexual assault victims. Now, these sexual assault allegations were made when she was at a young age, so they will have had a long-term effect and influence on her anxiety and PTSD. The allegations were towards an important person in her life, someone who controlled her career and made a lot of decisions for her, so she will have felt like she lost a lot of trust. When she did start to branch out and express herself during a music career by putting down the cat ears and appealing to a wider audience rather than a younger audience, the media was shocked and she was sexualised online a lot. This was just because of the choice of her outfits. Having a past which included sexual mishaps will have been very traumatic, as memories and experiences would have flooded back up, adding to her PTSD. These experiences will have been hugely traumatic, and having to relive them would have caused a lot of stress and fear. No, they were just experiences that happened in her earlier years. She's also had a lot of traumatic experiences recently, mostly involving death. For example, her granddad's death, who she was extremely close to, really impacted her, as she no longer had that safety blanket of his comfort and reassurance. She had to find newer ways of relieving her stress. She had to watch him suffer a long-term illness as well, which won't have been beneficial for her anxiety. Not only did she have to go through the terrorist attack herself, she also had the guilt of everyone else's contribution to PTSD, as she feels guilt and blame because they were there to see her, as well as being traumatised by her ex's death and not being able to fully move on from this in terms of relationships, causing her to have a lot of failed relationships over her lifetime. These traumatic experiences heightened her anxiety and made her more inclined to have panic attacks, so she was more emotionally unstable and less able to cope with her mental health issues. This relates to the psychological model, as it affected her coping skills, social skills and her mental health. Now here I'll be talking about Ariana's precipitating factors, which are factors that trigger the onset of the above concerns and problems to the person's life. A potential trigger of hers could be social media, as it would trigger her anxiety and PTSD. Glizzard and Mitchell 2018 say that there is evidence to suggest that the use of social media can result in people developing mental health conditions including anxiety, stress and depression. For Ariana, who already suffers with severe anxiety, the use of social media will not be beneficial to recover from this mental illness, which doesn't help the fact that celebrities are required to post on social media regularly to keep their fans updated. Like previously mentioned, she suffers from a lot of online abuse and hate on a lot of social media platforms. Victims of cyberbullying have increased experience of depression, anxiety and feelings of loneliness. This psychological feeling of loneliness can be seen in Ariana when she flew her two dogs out on tour with her, because she couldn't connect with people. The feeling of uncertainty for her is always around the corner as the anniversary looms. It's a constant reminder of what happened, so she can never escape her feelings towards that day. Also, seeing photos is a reminder as she can never escape. Seeing these photos could make her feel unsafe. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a theory that describes in 5 stages what are believed to be necessary for a satisfied life. He argued that the failure to have these needs met at various stages of the hierarchy could lead to illness, particularly psychiatric illness or mental health issues. For Ariana, her physiological needs to maintain life, like oxygen, food and water, have been met, which means the focus typically shifts to safety needs. After the bombing attack, she struggles to feel safe, so when safety needs are not met, post-traumatic stress may occur. Also, having to see people when she's not on form could heighten her anxiety. This could include doing shows or interviews, or just even going out to the public to socialise. Recently, she's had to cancel quite a few meet and greets because her anxiety was at an all-time high. Perpetuating factors. These are factors that maintain negative symptoms of the current issue and problems. Constantly being in the public eye wouldn't be helpful for her anxiety, as she'll constantly be under scrutiny for every little thing she does and says. There's a stereotype for celebrities to not have mental health issues, so they put themselves under pressure to look perfectly fine to the public. She's just announced that she'll be in a new film called Don't Look Up, which will be hugely nerve-wracking for her, especially as she'll be starring alongside Oscar award-winning actors like Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence and Meryl Streep. This will have a huge impact on her anxiety. She'll have a lot of pressure to keep up to them. Another new job that she's just accepted is a judge on The Voice, so being on TV every week whilst having to coach and mentor contestants is worrying, as it creates risks and anxiety attacks, as it could become too much pressure for her, whilst being in the limelight is quite overwhelming. According to the American Psychiatric Association 2013, a personality disorder is an ongoing pattern of behaviours and experiences that varies significantly from expectations. The general diagnostic criteria for the DSM is an enduring pattern of innate experience and behaviour that deviates from the norms of culture in 2 or more ways. This could include cognition, affectivity, interpersonal and functioning, and impulse control, which often leads to distress. Cognitively, Ariana has a different perception of herself to others, as she has a very low self-esteem and self-worth after years of not getting to be her true self. These symptoms contribute to her current issues. Affectivity, interpersonal, functioning and impulse control-wise, I don't feel her behaviours are severe enough to pick up on, so I wouldn't diagnose her with a personality disorder. There are 3 clusters of personality disorders, so if she was diagnosed with one, I'd say her behaviours would fit into Cluster C, as Cluster C personalities are characterised by anxious and fearful behaviours, which we know that she has. Doing live tours maintains negative symptoms as well for anxiety and PTSD, as performing in front of thousands of people will always build up nerves, especially when she's had so many negative connotations towards live shows, like bombing attacks, as well as on-stage anxiety and panic attacks as well. Psychopathology is the in-depth study of problems related to mental health. Signs of this vary depending on the nature of the condition. Some signs could include excessive worry, anxiety, fear, feelings of distress, the inability to concentrate, and the withdrawal of activities once loved. All of these negative signs we can see that Ariana shows. Worry, anxious fear whilst performing, having to cancel shows as a result of this, withdrawing from events, having to cancel these events, feeling distressed because of zoning out, blanking out. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, more commonly known as the DSM, was created as an assessment system for mental illness. After looking into Ariana's life, I think it's clear to say that she does have an anxiety disorder, and I would diagnose her with this. Finally, I will be talking about Ariana's protective factors. These are a person's strengths and positive things in their life that contribute to them maintaining good emotional and mental health. Being so well known from a young age and always being on the go with new material and opportunities, Ariana has a net worth of £150 million. Money is a positive thing, as she doesn't have to worry about basics like food or security on top of dealing with her anxiety and PTSD. Dahlgren and Whitehead 1993 say that mental health is determined by the interaction between the individual's characteristics, lifestyle and the physical, social and economic environment. The social determinants of health suggest that because she's been brought up with wealth, health and fortune, her mental health issues shouldn't be as severe as those who are brought up in poverty. But despite this theory, this doesn't take into account somebody's personal experiences which could affect their trauma and mental health issues. She's also got a lot of support from different people, including her family, her fans, her new husband, so she can rely and trust these people during her tough times. Kuzik 1989 states that people would die from great loneliness without the presence of pets. So for Ariana, her dogs will have been a huge comfort and relaxation response, as it's said that dogs can lower anxiety and help people relax, which does explain why she flew her dogs out to her when she was performing live shows. This definitely helped to maintain positive health. New jobs and opportunities also keep her active and going. Having constant work will maintain good emotional health as she will feel wanted and relevant. Also, having a hard-working, proactive personality and never giving up can help prevent particular behaviours. This is because she's determined and she will not give up despite her struggles. To finish up, in conclusion, Ariana Grande may be dealing with extreme trauma causing PTSD and anxiety. If I were to diagnose her, I would diagnose her with these illnesses. After completing the assignment, I've learnt about different theories relating to mental health and how they relate to individuals. I know how to identify risks and what signs and symptoms to look out for in terms of mental illness. So I will take this into my future career and understand how it can affect someone's ability in social settings. I'd say she could benefit from continuing seeking support from different informal sources, like friends and family, just to ensure that she does maintain her mental health state. Here is my reference list where my information stems from. Thank you for listening to my Introduction to Mental Health presentation.